Hello and good morning, everybody. This is Jake. We have a great little webinar for you guys today. Welcome all of you who are live in attendance and welcome to those watching in the future. We got a special little treat for you guys today, a guest webinar. Kryssie Maybay from Kismet Design has been gracious enough to do this webinar for us. We're really excited to have her here. Before we get going, definitely want to do a little housekeeping here. Just know that this is being recorded, so we will try to have this up and posted, later today or Monday, and you'll be able to watch it over and over and over. If you guys have questions, please, please, please get those queued up and ready to go. There's a Q&A button you can click and type those questions into us. I will try my best to answer what I can, and then we'll leave some time at the end for Kryssie to handle all of those. And then there is a chat box, chat window there. Feel free to use that, chat amongst yourselves. This is the processes of design. We love hearing little inputs of your guys' workflows and things that work well for you. So if it's just banter back and forth, please keep it there, but put all questions in the Q&A so that we can kind of focus and put them there. So we are going to kind of get rolling here, and I'm going to turn the time right over to you, Kryssie.
Thank you so much. I am super excited to be here. A little bit about me before we jump into the presentation. I am the owner of Kismet Design, located in Washington State, and also the creator of the Process Driven Designer podcast. I am a landscape architect. I started my career in design build through and just outside of college, and I now run my own design-only firm, which specializes in residential design, although we do offer a little bit of commercial work, not a lot. And then we do construction oversight services with our partner contractors. I am deeply passionate about empowering fellow designers to find confidence and success with their businesses through implementing systems and processes that increase their efficiency, their productivity, and professionalism. We will be reviewing processes and systems that can be implemented into your design process and your business that will provide clarity while increasing efficiency and profitability. I hope that you're able to gather some useful tools and insights from this presentation, and I really want to encourage you to reach out to me with any feedback or questions that you might have. Again, I'm really excited to be here, and I really hope that you enjoy the discussion and get a lot of valuable information and inspiration. For those of you that listen to my podcast, you will know that I preach evolution and change just as much as process. I am a very process and strategy-oriented person in all facets of my life, and bringing that into my business has been very rewarding. But no person or business is stagnant. What works today might not work tomorrow. So following these strategies that we will talk about will set a framework not only to develop, but to continue to improve your processes as your business grows and evolves. Most of what we will talk about today can be easily implemented into most design businesses, although there's undoubtedly going to be some tweaks and adjustments you'll need to make to fit your unique business structure and personality. So take what you can in the details and put it to work. But more than that, I hope that you absorb the mindset and the greater picture strategy ideas that you can use to evaluate how you run your business. My business is design only, and I offer construction consultation services, and I work for multiple design build firms early in my career. So I do have that perspective, but I will try to explain the processes in a way that works for a broad range of business structures. Enough about me. Let's jump in. I know that many of you are business owners, but I'm assuming quite a few of you probably are not. Even if you are not the owner, you can still implement these strategies and affect positive change in your job using these tactics, even if it's only on a task level. Now ask yourself, why do you show up in your business or your job every day? For most creatives, it's not just to punch a time clock and earn a paycheck. It is often much, much more than that. It is often uniquely complex, but at the end of the day, it boils down to a balance of finances and passion. Yes, we all need to earn a living, but the choice in how you do that and if it feeds something deep in your soul is what drives most creatives to push harder and express themselves in their work more passionately. Creative careers are not the only fields that encounter this balancing act of finances and passion. Many creative entrepreneurs are challenged with how to balance their time and outputs to be profitable. The creative process can be messy, and creative people can be, well, pretty squirrely at times. The processes that you implement into your business and the efficiencies created through those processes are what makes work flow so that you can not only make a profit, but enjoy doing it along the way. Establishing processes for those of you with previous careers in corporate, also know them as SOPs, will ensure that you are able to clearly communicate to both clients and employees, managing expectations, stay on track, and not get sidetracked while keeping everyone efficient. For those of you with employees, having established processes and templates will help you to set your employees up for success so that they have the tools and the information at their fingertips to meet your expectations without you needing to micromanage them to get there. Because no one likes a micromanager. But for many of us, it is really hard to give up control and let someone do something without you, especially if they're doing it in a different way. This can be especially challenging for business owners going from being a solopreneur to building a team. You get so used to doing things yourself, and ideas and processes become so ingrained that you forget how you do it and can't seem to verbalize in a productive way what or how you want things done. Well-defined processes and systems give employees the power and encourages them to take initiative, which allows you to better delegate so that you can focus on tasks that are more critical for you to be involved in. If they know the values of your business and the desired outcomes and have a clear roadmap how to get there, everybody wins. The primary objectives in developing the processes and systems we will talk about today is to establish clear communication, and that is to everyone, employees, clients, business partners alike. Be efficient, which translates to profit, and to build a strategy of trust and reliability, keeping customers coming back and referring you out. And efficiency also means you free up time and bandwidth to service more customers as well, which I know we all would love to do. Most everyone here, I'm assuming, is pretty familiar with some iteration of a standard design process. Regardless of industry, most design professionals follow a similar process flow when looking at it from a high level. Each industry and each niche within that industry will have its own variables, and each designer will make that process their own. Before establishing your processes and digging into templates, you need to be very clear on your offering and your ideal client. Who do you serve and how do you serve them? What are your business values and goals? Are you a design build contractor serving homeowners in high-end suburban neighborhoods that focuses on projects with high-end elements like structures and pools? Or are you a garden designer working in urban areas designing container plantings for balconies and rooftops? Yes, there will always be some gray area, and typically your ideal client and project profile may have multiple layers, depending on the array of services that you offer. It's pretty rare to find a designer who is not in the industry because they are following their passion, but it is still important to synthesize very clearly who, what, and where to provide direction and a foundation for your business. Designers are easily distracted. The creative mind wanders easily, So creating a framework and some boundaries helps keep our minds to continue working in a productive direction. If you haven't read the book by Simon Sinek, Start With Why, I highly recommend it. It is amazing. Beyond figuring out your why, don't forget the who. For myself, in reading that book, I found that defining my why was easier by starting with the who I aim to serve first. Knowing your values for both your personal life and your business life also helps you to evaluate your systems, goals, and strategies. Clearly communicating your values to your employees also helps them to make better decisions that align with your business. A great example of this can be found in multiple different large corporations. Nordstrom is a good example. Everyone knows that the heart of their values is customer service. It can be seen in staffer interactions, their return policy, and even how they staff their stores. How do you want your customers to feel before, during, and after working with you? How do you want your employees to feel each day? These are all important to define and be very clear on. A custom home builder that aims to build only a few homes a year for elite customers will have a different set of values and ideas of how and what their business offers than that of a track home builder, for example. Each can deliver something they are proud of, but the goals and the processes to get there will look very different. The metrics and strategy will also be different. Once the offering is clear, the initial processes can be developed, refined, and managed to ensure what you are doing and how you are doing it is well thought out. As we build our careers and stack up years of experience, we will be exposed to multiple workflows and processes, many of which we hold on to and still use. Before adding to it, it is a great exercise to ask why you do things the way that you do them. And I'll give you a hint here. The answer should not be because that's how I've always done it or because that's how I was taught. Keep asking yourself why until you get to some defensible reasoning. For example, I will not meet with a client at their property until I have had a phone call with them first. Yes, this is a practice that I picked up from previous colleagues, but the real reason is that it ensures that I have the opportunity to vet the client, explain the process, and review ballpark fees before I have the expenditure of time and travel for an on-site meeting. I have had great phone conversations with people that sound like they would be a good fit, but after reviewing expected fees or scope and timeline of services, I find out that our values and the systems don't align. Meeting with them on site would have been a waste of both of our time. It also allows me to get a better gauge of the size and complexity of the project so that I am not double stacking large, complex projects together in my schedule. And I can space them out so that I can really focus on them individually. And we all know it is much, much harder to turn a client away when you are face to face with them at their home versus over the phone. If you don't already do this, I highly recommend it. You'll thank me later. The next step is to sketch out your process and client flow. The more detailed, the better. Once you have this, you can highlight what you need to work on. This is the process you can repeat, if not every year, every couple years. As your business, your team, your clients, the economy all evolve and change, you will need to evolve your processes along the way. Test and change frequently to make sure that you are getting the most from your systems. You can see here a basic design workflow. In reality, there's a lot more nuance and information that will go into this, but for visual purposes, today, this works. Once you have this mapped out, list all of the documentation or templates that you have for each step. Also note what communication and deliverables are associated with those steps. This is where it starts to get fun. Hopefully, you already have a document like this in your business. If you don't, you'll be starting from scratch, so keep it flexible. One tool that I find really useful for this is Asana. It is a program that I use and love in my business. I use it for tracking clients, as well as documenting systems and processes, meeting notes, and daily and weekly to-do lists for everyone. Here you can see a screenshot of what that looks like, and you can see the subtasks in each. In Asana, you can create each task and add notes and subtasks, and all of the pieces can be easily moved around, and you can even assign tasks and projects to a specific team member. If you are more low tech, you can clear a wall and use sticky notes. Remember, make this your own and do what works best for you. My process starts with the initial client contact, which is typically through my website. In my contact page, they are prompted to fill out a questionnaire that contains the necessary contact information, as well as a detailed questionnaire about their project. They have questions on their site, their vision, their experience level, and preferences. After they fill this out, we will schedule a phone consultation where I review this information with them, as well as the design process, expected fees, and timelines for their project. If it's a good fit for both of us, we schedule an on-site consultation, which is basically the design kickoff meeting. Prior to that meeting on site, we do some preliminary site research so that if there are any easements, restrictions, or challenging site conditions present, we can review that on site together. At that initial meeting, we walk the property, review goals and ideas, review the design process again, and then a design proposal is presented and ideally approved at the end of that meeting. If approved, I stay that same day and take site measurements. When I return to the office, I sketch initial rough ideas and scan the site measurements. During the next weekly planning meeting, a few options for meeting times are targeted, and the client is emailed to get that meeting on the calendar. The measurements get traced into Land Effects, and once the sketches have been refined a little, they go into CAD as well. Along with the concepts, we also provide some inspiration photos and a plant palette. At the concept review meeting, the client is walked through the concepts and the plant palette, and we discuss very rough budget ideas based on material options provided. I leave the client with 2 plan copies, and if I don't hear back from them in about a week, I check back in for their feedback. Once I have feedback, the final plan is developed and sent for approval. Once the final plan has been approved, we move on to planting design and lighting design. After the plant layout is established, we put together a photo packet, which also contains maintenance guidelines for all of the plants selected. When reviewing the final plans with the client, we review the planting design, lighting, and options for moving forward into installation. And on from there. I won't keep lining it out for you. You can read a little bit here and also on my website if you're curious. But each step in the process has either a system, a template, or a script that is followed, or all of the above for some of these tasks. Some clients or projects require some tweaking, but 99% of my projects follow this flow. It is often those projects that I let veer outside of my standard process that tend to be the ones that are the most challenging or the less efficient. Now you can easily start to evaluate and note areas where you have templates and processes, areas that you need to revise or add to. You will also see gaps where you may just be winging it each time. Once you have this, you can create a list and prioritize which should be tackled first. I suggest starting with some small, easy ones to get some momentum and feel the rush of making progress. Keep in mind that nothing you put in place will be set in stone. As you use these, they will evolve and get better and become more robust. You can see here the timeline we looked at previously and notes showing what is in place, what needs to be developed, and what needs to change. For those of you that have well-established businesses, you might not be as involved in all of those processes, So, bringing your team in on this exercise and getting their feedback on what happens, what works, and especially what doesn't work well would be really helpful. You might be surprised at some of their experiences and feedback on how your systems could get better and what things they feel they are missing that could make them more productive. For larger teams, you might also want to know who or what team is responsible for each step in the process. An example is for design build companies. There will typically be a handing of the torch from the design team to the install team. Do you have a process and strategy for how to make that transition as smooth as possible? Maybe there's a project lead that stays with the project throughout both phases, all worthy of noting and evaluating. For me, although I do not offer installation services, I do offer construction oversight. I have my list of preferred contractors, and I work as the owner advocate through the entire process, start to finish. That way, the client receives consistent communication and service the entire way through. It also frees up some administration time for my contractor to focus on the install rather than answering emails and documenting changes. The relationship that I build with my clients and contractors is a valuable part of the process, and they can both rely on me to be the conduit to a successful project. So, back to the objectives. Let's start with communication, which, in my opinion, is one of the key pieces to a successful business, regardless of what you offer. From the very first interaction a client has with your business, they should have a clear understanding of what you offer and if you are a good fit for them. Even better, if you can also communicate if they are a good fit for you. What do I mean by that? I have a client questionnaire on my website that majority of my clients fill out prior to that intake phone call that I mentioned. In that questionnaire, there are a few qualifying questions, and the main qualifier tends to be budget. I have multiple choice questions on both design and install budget, and the ranges and options available for them to choose from are an indicator to the client if it's a good fit. I wish I had analytics on how many people start to fill out that form and stop at that point, but unfortunately, I don't. I do, however, get periodic calls by people that have gotten to that point in the questionnaire and called to ask if their project is too small or too far out of my scope. My offering is not a good fit for someone who just needs some plant suggestions for some existing beds, and that's okay. I can refer them to a colleague that would be a better fit. Also, because I don't advertise or note anywhere on my website the minimal commercial and multifamily design services that I offer, I limit those inquiries as well. And as a result, I only provide this service to architects and engineers that I have a developed relationship with. Communication throughout a client's entire interaction with you should be consistent at every step of the way. I often hear clients complain about previous experiences where a designer or a contractor came out to give them a bid or proposal, was very engaging. They felt like it was a great fit, and then nothing. No email, no bid, no follow up, ghosted. Or they finally checked in later, but it was months and months later when the contractor needed more work or things slowed down. Not only is that poor customer service, which I think we can all agree on, but it does not instill any trust with the client that you will do what you say and stand behind your product or service. This customer service experience can be greatly improved with templates and established processes. Write it down, whether it is you performing the tasks or an employee or contract. There should be clear, easy to follow direction on timeline, deliverables, and processes. Consistency builds trust better than anything else. Having branding and communication that is consistent not only looks but feels more professional to your clients. For solopreneurs, this is easier, but for those of us with employees, it is important to document expectations. I would also encourage even those solopreneurs out there to still document your processes, communications, and get clear on it to be able to put more tasks on autopilot. This makes generating new documents and templates easier too. Each time a client engages with your business, it is an opportunity to build or break that relationship and their trust. And most clients don't give us second chances, unfortunately. Creating templates and scripts is a great communication tool. Using a script sounds a bit icky, but I'm not talking about the script like the one that the telemarketer uses when he calls you at dinner. I'm talking about a documented conversation flow with key points and items to cover to ensure that you or your employees cover all of the information needed and stay on brand while not having to guess or think about what else they need to cover. Over time, this becomes second nature. I find that when I am explaining the process, I don't even really consciously think about it because I say the same thing in the same way each time, and it's easy. It also helps those of us that can get nervous or anxious or new employees. Not everyone has the skill to think quickly on their feet or remember each step and task every time, especially if you have a client that interrupts when you're in the middle of explaining something complex. The longer you do it and the more you repeat it, the more it will feel natural. But everyone starts at the beginning at some point. If you do the task or flow through a meeting different every time because you don't have a process, you won't develop those habits or the muscle memory that come to save the day when you get thrown a curveball by a client or distracted by a challenge. I have created templates for email responses and invoices as well. That way, I don't forget anything. These templates allow me to move faster while staying consistent and, most importantly, accurate. For example, my invoicing template contains all of the line items with descriptions as needed. And all I have to do is add in the amount, save it to that client, and hit send. I save the time of creating it and reviewing multiple times to ensure that I have all of the right information. Sometimes that template serves as a reminder of something that I've forgotten. It also saves me from spelling errors and typos, especially if I'm in a rush. But to be fair, spelling is not my strong suit. Another example is when a client fills out the questionnaire on my website. My website, I'm certain probably like yours as well, kicks back an auto response. But then we respond back within 1 to 2 business days to set up that phone consultation. We have a template email with the exact verbiage that is simply updated with availability for the phone call. No need to type the email each time. It is already saved and just needs to be updated with dates. That way, even a new employee taking over this task can easily keep our communication consistent. And they also know the expectation of information going to the client and the voice that we want to use in our communications. When talking to someone on the phone for the first time, I have set up a consultation. I have a sheet that contains a notes section as well as a checklist of items to review and a spot to fill out the client information. There is nothing worse than talking to a client on the phone and forgetting to get their email address and having to call them back to coordinate information exchange or to confirm an appointment when an email would have been much more effective. It also is a great way for me to document that I reviewed with them expected fees, process, and have notified them that I will be calling for utility locates prior to our meeting. I find that providing information to the clients upfront helps me manage their expectation, reduces questions or concerns, and it sets the stage for them that I will be guiding them through the process. I always aim to answer as many questions before they are asked, if I can. This is also a great trust building tool. Systems and templates are only good if you use them. There is no way to know if they work well and no way to gain the benefits of establishing them if you are not using them. It is also important to remember that everyone should be using them too. If the owner of a business or the upper level management is not using the systems and tools provided to new or unseasoned employees, it sends the message that they are not important. Leading by example and using the systems establishes the understanding that they are indeed important to your business. One of the most common gaps here that I see is timesheets and time tracking. If it is important to you to track how much time is spent on projects, but as an owner, you are not tracking your own time, it undermines the importance and accuracy of time tracking. Yes, your employees have a timesheet to be paid on an hourly rate, most likely. And for most business owners, you might not pay yourself by the hour. But remember why you're tracking tasks by job in the first place. The more accurate the information, the more informative it will be to your business planning, evaluation, and decisions, the better you can bid projects. You can see here part of my final design package. Here is my planting plan and the folder for the client containing the project management contract. To get to this point, I have implemented and used many templates and systems. A few that are visible here are my LandFX CAD template, which you'll see in a minute. My templates in LandFX contain my sheet template, my general notes, standard formatting, as well as standardized plant symbols. In this photo, you can also see the client folder for smaller deliverables, which is the white folder to the side. Inside that is a photo packet of plant selections, a plant list, and a contract for managing the installation process. All of which, of course, as you could guess, have templates. In our file system, this DWG file is named using our convention standards, as well as the PDF. And the client folder was created using a folder template that already had subfolders in it. So when a new client is signed up, all we have to do is just copy and rename the folder, and everything is already in there. And it is clear where to store files and where to find them later. This saves valuable time in multiple steps of the process. Here are some more visuals and templates and processes at work. I go from sketches on Flimsy to drafting the ideas into LandFX using those templates. I have blocks and standard conventions already saved within my LandFX template. Then the design goes into planting design and lighting design. Within LandFX, which is the system that I use and assume most of you do as well, since you're here today, there are countless block templates within the system that LandFX has already provided, and I have added my own for elements and fixtures that I have drawn and want to reuse. My CAD template is clearly laid out with layers, line weights, and drafting standards. All of these conventions can be found and customized in LandFX. They have multiple options to choose from, and you can customize it to all of your needs. An example of this is the plot styles. I use the standard grayscale plot style from LandFX, which is a standard CAD base. And I have modified a few select colors that I prefer to see differently in model versus print than that standard template. Again, super easy to customize and make it your own. And then onto final prints for installation, and finally resulting in finished projects. Another template worthy of noting is the folder template for client photos. I have photos subfolders into before, construction, and finished folders. Within that finished folder, I also have subfolders for initial completion, 6 months, and 12 months after completion. I offer check-ins at that 6 and 12-month increment to meet with my clients, answer questions, but really to get updated photos of how the garden is looking. This makes finding the most recent photos easy without having to sort through hundreds of images. Yes, I take a lot of photos, as I'm sure you do too. Then when it comes to drafting templates, the processes will vary a little based on how you create your designs. If you're using a different program or if you hand draft. I know a couple designers that hand draft the initial concepts and then move into CAD. And so that will have some variables as well. Regardless, there are systems and templates that you can put into place. I mentioned on the last slide that I have standardized plant symbols. Within my CAD template, I have a template project which contains my standard plant palette. That way, the plants we use on a regular basis will be consistent across projects. This really saves time when reviewing a plan someone else has designed within my business, and especially when it comes to plant layout during construction. I can look at the symbol and know what the plant is without having to find or read the label. If you hand draft, you can create templates for symbols that can be traced to save time and create consistency as well. But this is not built in a day. This has evolved over time, and each project builds on that library. Occasionally, I will remove plants from this as well when I run into plants that either develop problems consistently. Sometimes it's even just because I've overused it and I'm just sick of seeing it on projects. It is always evolving. I have built my block library the same way. I started with a few select ones, and each time I design something new that I think I might want to reuse, I save it. I have in my block library probably 30 blocks for furniture that I have saved, from chairs to sectionals, grills, benches, you name it, in addition to the ones already within land effects. I have 4 or 5 fire pits, ranging from something designed to be a block or stone veneer vessel to steel urns or fire pits with a boulder surround. My general notes section took a long time to get where it is now. It's been a while since I've changed it or added to it, but the first few years, it was constantly changing as I ran into things I wish I had documented. Each of these elements saves me time with each design, and it saves even more time when onboarding a new employee. Hand drafting aside, when bringing in a new employee into your company, you want to ensure that deliverables look the same and contain the same level of accuracy and detail. Having notes, processes, and templates available and accessible makes their job easier and helps you to be able to delegate more tasks quicker, reducing training and review time. Before we jump into tracking, I feel it is important to note that one aspect when it comes to design that I intentionally skipped is creativity. That cannot nor should not be templated, and the routine you follow for productivity can be. Each designer and each project will have its own unique constraints, opportunities, and quirks. The creativity and expression are where the joy is found in design. Templating and systematizing the rest leaves room for more creativity and expression so you don't get bogged down spending all of your time on the mundane business tasks. Everyone's creative process will look very different. For me, when I sit down to work on a project, I have a routine to get me into a creative flow and that state of mind. I start by updating my to-do list for the things I need to do later to get them out of my head so I don't have to worry about forgetting them. That clears some mental space. I clean my desk because usually it's in shambles. And then I light a candle, turn on some music, and turn off my email, turn off my calendar, and most of the time, grab a cup of tea. Then I review the client file, their photos, my notes, any inspiration photos provided by the client, or inspiration photos that I've already gathered. And from there, I can focus on that project and tune everything else out. Again, everyone's process for this will look different. Maybe you can't focus with music on, or maybe it has to be instrumental only. Maybe you have to put your phone in another room to reduce the temptation for distraction. I know I've felt that way before. Just like a toddler's bedtime routine, if you follow a routine, your mind will create paths to expected outcomes. For me, this routine gets me into a deep focus state almost instantly. I have used it over and over to establish that routine. Being self aware of your needs and your pitfalls that get you distracted will help you establish a system that works for you. One of the biggest keys to performance is functioning on instinct or from a place of habit, almost as if on autopilot. The more that you can free your mind from thinking about the processes, the more you can focus on the creativity. And that is only built through repetition. So, for tracking, this is where the information nerd in me gets all excited. Break out the spreadsheets. The more information you have, the more power you have in evaluating what works and what doesn't. But don't go overboard and dive too deep down the rabbit hole that you spend all of your time tracking and none of it doing the thing. Track as much as you want, but keep it simple and focus on the things that actually need evaluation to help in the decision making and goal making for your business. Every responsible business owner tracks revenue and profit, but not all can easily tell you the dials that have the most effect on their revenue and profit. What services are the most profitable? For a design build company, you may determine, and most do, that construction is the most profitable. And design is often just a way to get there. But that design serves as the critical piece in feeding that pipeline for construction. So often that design is the dial you have the most control over to feed your profit. Dig a little deeper and look at what types of projects are the most profitable. What is the difference between an efficient and therefore profitable job versus one that, well, maybe didn't go as planned? For design-only businesses, what types of design are the best for you? If you offer project management or construction oversight services, what contractors are the most effective for you to work with? All of these questions are important to ask in your business, but unless you are tracking and have a way to easily and simply review these things, you won't be able to know. In my own business, I have targeted a few types of projects as well as types of clients that are not only the most profitable, but the most enjoyable and the most efficient. They are not always the same, but there's a sweet spot of overlap in all of those, which contains the best projects. I am not a design build company, so design is my primary service. I also offer consulting services overseeing the installation phase, but that service has a very similar profit opportunity for me. The biggest difference between the two services is that the efficiency and profitability of the design service are within my control, where the installation oversight, much of the control is in the hands of my contractors. If they underbid the project, or if they have delays or inefficiencies that make the project take longer, it reduces my profitability as well. Or if I'm working with a new contractor, that just is inherently going to take more of my time to make sure that I am ensuring that the contractor has the information that I need to provide to him and that I can provide the best service and oversight for my client as well. Knowing how your business operates and having clear goals and ranges for services and costs is important, as I'm sure you all agree. And having the information to back up that gut instinct is more important. Sometimes your gut instinct might be wrong. Usually it has a little bit of information that is by feel that's very instinctual and very accurate. But it also, if you've been in business for any long amount of time, that gut instinct sometimes gets tied to what was instead of what is. And I think one of the most important tracking tools in my business that I use is time tracking. The information that this provides is so important to my decision making. At a glance, I can see what tasks are taking the most amount of time. I can see if designs are being bid appropriately. I can see how a new employee is catching on or where their weak spots are. I can see which clients are taking the most amount of time and admin tasks or which contracts require more time or on-site longer site visits. All of this helps me to evaluate and inform me to move forward and to grow. The best tools for my business to see where inefficiencies are is my time tracking. Identifying them is the first step to fixing them. Once fixed, I can evaluate how effective that fix is. But again, the system has to be simple and it has to be something that you use consistently on a regular basis across your company. If it's not simple, it's not going to get used. I have a tendency to make things a little bit more complicated than they need to be initially. And then I have to rein myself back and say, okay, is this really something that I need to break out this far? And the further you break things out, the more complex it is, the more time it's going to take, and the less apt you are to use it. So simplifying it, getting down to just the bare bone pieces that really affect your decision making and your tracking and your ability to easily and clearly evaluate and see where your business is are the most important. Regardless of how long your business has been established, the last few years have been a season of immense growth. The pressure put on the industry by consumer demand has had us all scrambling to keep up. I have seen a stabilization of that in the last year or so, but who knows what the future holds. But regardless about your feelings, ideas, or predictions of where the next few years will take us, we likely all have a plan for future growth. The exception to this is likely those looking to retire or sell their business in the near future, but I assume those people aren't tuning in today. Crazy growth aside, your planning and goal setting for your business happens on 3 levels. Your systems, templates, and tasks fall into these 3 levels of planning. Big picture planning or bird's eye view looks at everything in a long-term view. We're talking years long, quarterly and yearly, and even 5 to 10 years out. Planning and strategy at this level informs the other 2, but doesn't itself contain a lot of detail. At this level, it's about long-term trajectory and vision, as well as establishing and upholding those super important business values. At the project level, this is where the overarching systems come into play. Depending on the size of your business, these 3 levels of planning, strategy, and implementation may be carried out by different people in your business. For larger companies, that bird's eye view is going to be the owner or CEO or upper level management. And the task level will be lower level management and laborers. For solopreneurs and small businesses, each of these tasks will be you. Or maybe your entire team is involved in all of these tasks. The project level planning is setting the system and processes by which a client moves through your business from initial contact to completion. The task level is the detail of how all of that happens, and that level is where the templates are found. And the tools for getting each client through that project flow, which gets the business to its yearly goals. As you develop and refine your goals, your systems, and your templates, keep this hierarchy and this 3-tiered approach in mind. Start big and then move in deeper. The big picture planning will be what is less movable and more rigid or set in stone, pun intended, while at the task level, you will find more change and more evolution as you build your systems and grow and evolve. This might even change and evolve with different people leaving or joining your business. So this is your homework. Start with establishing or evaluating your values. This is the first step, really knowing what is important to you and how you want your business to impact the people within it and the people that you interact with. Then move on to really honing in on what your offering is and your ideal client and services. Then sketch out that process and all of your systems. Identify those existing processes and templates, as well as areas that need attention, either updating or refining, or most importantly, the pieces that need to have an established template or system. List out all of those documents that you need to make or revise. Make sure they're easy to understand and use on a consistent basis across your business. And finally, establish tracking metrics to follow and evaluate so you can see the successes and identify which pieces need to be further refined. If you set systems and templates in place that are not simple enough, if you're tracking the use of them, you will see that it's not getting used or not being used effectively. And that's a key indicator that it's too complex and needs to be simplified to be able to work more effectively and efficiently within your business. And remember, processes that will add the most value to your business and your life are the ones that are the most easily repeatable. The more you use your processes and templates, the more tasks and processes can be put on that mental autopilot and free up that mental capacity for the creative work, the problem solving, and the critical thinking that is so important to design. Your mind has amazing capabilities of completing complex tasks and subconsciously using them once it learns the prioritization of that task. Have you ever left the house in the morning without remembering if you brushed your teeth or turned off the stove or closed the garage door? I have. I do it all the time. You did it, but it is so ingrained in your routine that you don't even consciously think about doing it. When you have a process in your work that you can sit down at your desk and get right to the work without having to decide how to go about it, you just commit and go, it frees up so much time and mental capacity. Habits can get you into that flow state, which skyrockets your productivity and your creativity. Your best ideas sometimes come to you in the shower because you don't have to consciously think about the task at hand, which frees up that super important bandwidth for complex problem solving. Your processes and templates will create immense value in your business and the enjoyment of doing the work as well. So we will open it up for questions. I hope that if you've had questions throughout the presentation, that you've put them into the Q&A. If you haven't already, now is a great time to do that. I really appreciate you all tuning in. You've got your homework cut out for you, but we will open up for questions. And please, please, please reach out to me to connect and share and how you're able to implement into your business, or if you have any questions. If you do need more individualized help, to reach out. You can schedule a session or tune into my podcast or other classes that I offer. If you want the worksheet that goes with this presentation, there is an option to purchase that on my website. The link is up here. I'll see if LandFX can also send that out in their email as well. But you can get it on the shop on my website. And if you use the code LandFX in all caps, you will also get a discount.
Sweet. Kryssie, thank you so much. We do have a bunch of little questions, so I'm going to try to knock through them here. First one, just kind of working backwards a little bit, from a time management perspective, you're showing those charts and stuff. Like, what do you use for your time tracking stuff?
There are a ton of different apps and websites and even plugins that work well with QuickBooks. I am kind of an Excel junkie, so that is what I use. I have a pretty robust Excel worksheet that tabulates everything not only by client, but also by task so that I can easily see, for the Jones residence, how much time was spent on site measurements, how much time is spent on meetings, concept plans, revisions, all of that, so that I can easily assess and kind of get analytics for the year.
Sweet. What platform do you use for your qualifying surveys on your website?
My website is WordPress, and there's I forget what the actual, I think it's a WordPress plugin that just has a questionnaire, and it's really easy plugin. You can create all kinds of questionnaires on there, and it just creates a link, and I can update that all the time. So if I do have questions that keep coming up or things that need to be refined, I can change that questionnaire frequently.
Sweet. So I know you talked about like your typical follow-up time frame as far as, meeting with the clients and stuff like that, but from a proposal perspective, what's your typical follow-up time to hear back or reach back out?
So my design proposals are a little bit different than I think a good portion of designers out there. Most designers that I do coaching with typically will meet with a client, and then they'll head back to the office, put their, pencil to paper, kind of doing a checklist, and put together a written proposal and send that to the client. I actually have my contract printed on triplicate paper, and I have it's just got a simple checklist of elements involved, a spot for me to add a couple quick notes, and I present my contract and my proposal for the design fee at that initial consult meeting. So that way I don't have to spend the extra time going back to the office, thinking about it, usually overthinking about it. It's just done right then and there. And then it saves me a trip, because if they sign, which most people that are going to move forward with me sign that same day, I stay and take measurements unless it's like torrential downpour. And then I'm also saving myself an extra trip back to the site to take measurements.
Cool. So, that kind of leads, I guess, a little bit blended into this one. How are you expediting your site measurements and stuff? Are you using drone and stuff, or is it just always the site visit?
Um, Typically always the site visit. I've had a couple projects that I've had a survey done, and I haven't found the right combination of someone that gets the same information that I do. I do a lot of photos. I also, while I'm measuring the site, I measure it out to scale on graph paper while I'm there. So I'm actually drafting it as I'm measuring, and I will note specific spots and measure like where I feel like a specimen tree needs to be, where the viewpoint that needs to either be captured or blocked is. And those things just can't be replaced by someone other than the designer. So that's really part of this design process, is me taking those site measurements.
Cool. And I'm gonna do my own personal plug for Mosier. If you've ever dealt with that guy on site, measurements is an awesome additional little companion for getting all of that line work to scale automatically into a DGN file that you can use for stuff. So, um,
I still
that's
have that on my to-do list to
it
check out.
is a time saver. So, anyways, let's see here. At what point in your processes are you actually collecting the fees? So, is it right at the beginning? Is it after the first visits? Like, where does that kind of fall?
So I do charge a fee for that initial on-site consultation, and that gets paid either before or at that meeting. And I use a QuickBook link so they can easily pay it online before we meet. Some people still prefer to use checks, so those people will typically pay me at the meeting. And then if they want to move forward with design services, I collect 50% up front, 50% at concept meeting, and that way all of my design time is essentially prepaid. And then at the end of the design process, nothing is due unless they want to move forward with the construction oversight services.
Cool. Um, how tight are your specifications for your finishes and products and stuff, or more Do you use a select group of contractors for bidding to ensure that vision is kind of executed as drawn? Where do you draw
Yeah.
the line with that?
I'm very picky about the contractors I work with. I feel like that is a really big piece to the service that I offer my clients. And those relationships have been built over years. I think, with the exception of one, all of the contractors that I work with on a regular basis, I've been working with for over 10 years. And they speak Kryssie quite fluently, which is nice. I do spend a lot more time kind of making sure that things are more detailed out, more explicit for the contractors that I don't have that long-standing relationship with. But not every contractor wants a designer on site looking over their shoulder. And I find that there has to be a mutual respect, and trust between a designer and a contractor to really work efficiently. And I'm on site 2, 3 days a week checking in. I bring them cookies, especially if I'm going to make them make a bunch of changes. But I'm working closely with them on rock setting and laying out lines of the patio and making sure that things are looking as expected. I'll even go to the stone yard and flag pallets of stone or risers or things like that to help them out and to also feed my uh crazy kind of attention to detail. And then I also procure my own plant material. And that way I'm making sure that that tree has the structure that I'm looking for. And if something does need to be substituted, I'm making that decision instead of relying on the contractor to read my mind on why I chose that particular plant. And then I bring it on site, set it in its place for the contractor to install. And that way, if something does need to tweak or change, or if I want to make sure that that tree is exactly centered out of the kitchen window, that's my responsibility, not theirs.
Sweet. Um, Couple more here, and I know we're just at the top of the hour here, so this one's kind of a two-part question. So the first part is, do you have target times you kind of try to meet for how much time you put into the elements of a project? And then how do you track or include the time that you spent building or making that automation for those templates?
I think I understand that question. So as far as like target times, I obviously track my time. So I've got a pretty good idea of different types of projects, size and complexity, how long the steps in the process will take me. And so I schedule things out accordingly. So if I talk with someone that's a really large project, I might book them out a little bit further on the schedule, than a really small project. Smaller projects are just easier to kind of fit into the schedule sometimes, especially when things are really busy. Where larger projects, I want to make sure that I'm really able to allocate the time and attention that it deserves.
Okay.
But I only do my initial consultations on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And that way it gives me the opportunity to kind of balance my week out. And that day is dedicated to that project. And I have blocked in there usually about 3 hours for the consult and site measurements. And then I don't typically book anything after that so that when I come back into the office, I can immediately do just a kind of a brain dump of some sketches and ideas. And sometimes I'll even, start grabbing some inspiration photos that have come to mind while I've been on site taking measurements.
Sweet. All right. Last one. Well, two. First one, really quick, easy. If the client's not a good fit, how do you let them know? It's kind of an awkward
Um,
conversation sometimes, but
it is a really awkward conversation sometimes. And I think the reason that they're not a good fit is will dictate how that conversation goes. Um, if it's someone that just like I have a young kids and we're super busy, and a lot of times I find that the thing that doesn't work for some clients, and it's probably more often than not, the people that aren't a good fit are because they can only meet on nights and weekends, and I don't work outside of standard working hours. So that's an easy one. It's not super awkward. It's just kind of matter of fact, like these are my working hours. This is when I'm available. And that doesn't coincide when you're available. So that's an easy one. Clients that I just feel like are going to be too challenging to work with or seem like they just really don't have a clear idea of what they're wanting, what they're asking for. That's the harder one, because you can't tell a client like, I don't want to work with you because I think you might be crazy. Um, and so usually it's something where, depending on the scope or where they're at, usually I will tell them that I feel like the design services that I offer don't align with what they're looking for. And I try to give them a referral for someone or an organization that they could use as a resource. So for example, if someone sounds like they don't really value the cost of the design and are asking like if they can get a discount or questioning why I charge for my consult fee, that's typically not a good fit. So I will direct them to a design build contractor. If it's someone that is a little bit far out of my range and I feel like they're going to need a lot of extra meetings, a lot of extra handholding, and I don't have that in my scope, then I will refer them to either another designer or an organization like APLD where they can look for a designer that's closer to them.
Cool. All right, last one. So we got a gentleman who would love to progress into having clients have them more involved with the construction oversight, um, to more encourage that they include one or two site visits as a part of the design agreement. Yet the clients don't take advantage of that part of things. He's just curious to hear how you do construction oversight successfully.
Um, I have it as a separate process because not every client needs or wants that service. And I think if it's part of the design process, it can get a little bit muddy. And oftentimes, after going through the design process, clients will forget that that's part of that service. And it can feel a little awkward, I'm sure, contacting them and saying, hey, I know it's in construction. I want to stop by. Because it's kind of like inviting yourself to a party that you weren't invited to. I have my service separate. It's a separate contract, everything where they sign up for that service. And it's a separate fee structure, everything. And that way I'm in control of that process and that system. And that also goes along with working with my contractors. I have had a couple projects where a contractor that I regularly work with sent was initially contacted by the client and then sent that referral to me to do design. And then the client already has that relationship with the contractor. So they don't sign up to have me oversee that process. But the contractor sometimes will be like, hey, we really need Kryssie to come check on site. We ran into something. This needs to tweak or change. Are you open to, having her come out? And usually I'll just charge an hourly fee for that visit. But part of that is the contractor advocating for my involvement.
Cool. Well, perfect. Things keep trickling in, so I want to, recommend everybody who didn't get their questions answered, feel free to reach out to Kryssie, with the contact information she's provided on the screen, and I'm sure she'd be happy to answer what she can. But again, thank you so much for this little guest webinar, and you guys have a good day.
Thank you so much.